story starts off on the outskirts of Silent Hill in an unspecified year. Harry Mason and his daughter Cheryl are making their way to creepy Silent Hill for a vacation for some reason. A biker cop gives Harry a look and then passes him by. Moments later, in black and white, Harry sees the copless motorcycle now crashed on the side of the road. Instead of slowing down and checking it out like a good person, Harry keeps his foot on the gas pedal and nearly hits a ghost in the middle of the street, swerving at the very last moment and getting into a car wreck. Soon after, Harry wakes up alone in his wrecked Jeep to find his daughter missing, and after taking a few steps he sees Cheryl in the fog and gives chase, following her down a creepy alley that gets a whole lot creepier. After entering a gate at the end of the alley, in the distance you can hear a creepy siren droning on. And of course, I have to show off this iconic camera angle shot that they tried to replicate in the movie with the incorrect character. Suddenly it grows dark because someone's fucking with God's light switch. Harry having only a lighter at his disposal. After passing a creepy wheelchair, a bloody gurney, and enough blood to make Barry Burton stop and stare for 5 minutes, it isn't then until Harry's path is blocked by a bloody corpse rotting on a gate. Does the horror of that sink into you, or is it just me? Harry is then attacked by a pack of naked gray third graders, double-wielding Call of Duty knives. After running around and getting your kneecaps chewed on, Harry finds himself trapped in an area where these monsters seem to get the best of him. Just before succumbing to your wounds, you wake up in a cafe with a biker cop that you passed by and seemingly crashed on her bike earlier. She introduces herself as Sybil Bennett, saying she doesn't know what's going on in this town, and she will go to get help, giving Harry a gun for some reason. Keep in mind, Sybil at this point hasn't seen the horrors of Silent Hill yet. She only knows that the town seems empty when it shouldn't be, and something is happening. After arming a citizen and leaving, Harry grabs a map and is about to follow Sybil, but a small red radio begins to blare static. Harry, interested, after grabbing said radio, the glass at the front door of the cafe is then broken. And there's another jump scare of a window breaking and a fucking pterodactyl bursts through the window, and using his newly acquired gat, Harry bursts a few caps and shuts that Jurassic Park shit down. Harry, now feeling like Dirty Harry, returns to the alleyway where the naked knife-wielding children made him pass out like a little bitch just a few minutes ago. He finds his daughter's sketchbook and the path blocked. There's a few pages torn out of her sketchbook saying only to school on it. After spending some time taking in the local sights and sounds of the destroyed remains of Raccoon City, Silent Hill, again, why wouldn't anyone want to take a vacation here? Harry finds more torn out pages giving him a little bit more detailed instructions. 2 sheets sitting in a pile of blood saying only Doghouse and Levin Street. After arriving outside the house, we just walk in like a boss because we got a gun and nobody's gonna make us faint out like a little bitch again. But this house is both extremely clean and extremely empty. After exiting out the back door, the siren starts blaring again and the sky begins to get dark. Harry now has a magical flashlight that comes out of nowhere, and through the backyard of this house we enter the school that looks really strangely similar to the school from Kindergarten Cop. We come to a bathroom that sounds like a little girl is exorcising a diarrhea demon out of her colon. And we come across a banging locker. And it's not who let the dogs out, but who let the cats out. Yeah, that joke is just as dated as this game. We find a desk with carvings and insults written on it. Whoever this kid was, they were either very mentally deranged or extremely bullied. Either way, the teacher of this fucking class sucks at their job and needs to be tossed into a fucking volcano. We are attacked once again by naked, knife-wielding children. We dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge our way into the Resident Evil-looking clock tower. We climb down and back up, and suddenly we are in a darker version of the same place we just left. Not darker in the light sense, but more darker in a scarier. It's a scarier place. You get what I'm saying. It's here we find our first symbol and our first sign that shit is about to go down. Things get a bit X-rated when we return to the banging school locker and find out that someone performed some messy cunnilingus and tore that pussy up. Pussycat, get your minds out of the gutter. And we come to an area that looks a lot like a boss stage fight area. And, shocker, it is. After dumping some of your extra ammo into the stranger things like boss, he does a slow-mo death, and existence seems to fade back into reality. Trust me, it's not really supposed to make sense. Harry sees the girl that's caused him to wreck his Jeep, fades out of existence as well. Harry walks through, down, and the way he sees it, some alcohol and religion probably sound pretty good right now. While walking through the town of Silent Hill, he hears some bells sounding off in the distance. You follow the sound of these bells and it leads you to a church. Harry goes into this nearby church and runs into let's be real here, a creepy old lady who gives off some Walking Dead vibe. Her name is Alessa Gillespie, and she leaves just as weirdly as you entered. But anyway, she leaves you this artifact, and it looks a lot like the Triforce, only 3D. It's a triangle of triangles. Weird. After leaving the church, Harry finds a drawbridge and lowers it, and gives him access to other parts of town. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because he's trying to find his daughter. And how is an 8-year-old who wouldn't know how to work a drawbridge get to the other side before it fully erased? I mean, I know it's kind of unrealistic, and this whole game is, strange, but trust me, crazy and stranger things have and will continue to happen. On the other side of this bridge, Harry enters Silent Hill Hospital, where he runs into Dr. Michael Kaufman, who immediately shoots Harry point blank in the gut. Harry, now having been scared shitless, stabbed by naked ghost children, been to hell a time or two, just seems to shrug this bullet off like most people shoo away flies. Harry explores a creepy old hospital, and the other world takes over again, and Harry finds a room with bloodstained bed and a picture of the girl that wrecked his Jeep. And in the corner of this photo, the name Alessa is written, which is kind of weird. I don't think anybody really puts their name on the front of a photo, or maybe I'm just looking too much into this. Harry makes his way back up from this really creepy and, disgusting room, and runs into a nurse that likes to give hugs and really creepy PS1 era smiles. Aww. So cute. After having a short conversation, Harry starts to hear blaring sirens that are so loud it seems to be hearing it from inside of his head. Nurse Lisa Garland tries to help Harry, but just before she can, he again faints like a little bitch baby, and sees Alessa, the Jeep destroyer, walking into a nearby bar. The crazy Triforce lady shows up again and tells Harry to go to the other church in town, because he needs his ass some religion. At this point, I would have rather just said, fuck it, she's not my real daughter. I tried. Time to be a single bachelor and hook up with the sexy blonde biker cop. Speaking of which, after finding a hole in the wall, Harry enters alone and tells Sybil to stay behind, as if she's not the trained police officer in this situation. Harry enters a weird shrine room and wakes up in a hospital talking to Lisa Garland, again, weirdly enough. After an extended long scene of her over-explaining things, Harry ends up back in the other world, now fighting a giant caterpillar. Trust me, I don't think it's meant to make sense either. After riddling this big-ass caterpillar with some bullets, the creature retreats and apparently had gained enough XP in this fight with Harry to level up into a giant moth. You fight this giant moth on the top of a radio tower, and the screen flashes white, and boom, you're back in regular old foggy Silent Hill, for better or worse. After killing Mothra, finally, Harry wants to go to get a Budweiser. And Lord knows we've all earned it. And he runs into the gut-shooting Dr. Kaufman, saving him from getting attacked by a demon dog. After a short back-and-forth conversation, Harry goes off and explores the bar, finding an old motorcycle in the garage. After looking at the bike and wishing he was a singular bachelor, he finds a red bottle of mystery fluid, and the shitty doctor comes in and starts acting like a prick, making this bottle of red stuff seem like it's really important to him, or the story, or us, or the overall plot, even though it's not emphasized very much. Anyway, Harry says, fuck this, prick, I'm gonna go hang out with the sexy biker cop and old Triforce lady. After another long-ass conversation, the three of them come up with the idea that there's only two places left for Harry's daughter in this entire town of Silent Hill, and that is the lighthouse or the amusement park. Harry takes the lighthouse, while Sybil takes the amusement park. The crazy old lady just takes nothing. She just leaves. After finding nothing at the lighthouse, Harry decides to join sexy blonde biker cop at the amusement park. Amusement park. But since this is Silent Hill and we have our third and final act that we're getting into, some shit has to go down. And after arriving at the amusement park, Harry finds Sybil in a wheelchair. And she gets up, clearly dazed and confused, and begins to lurch at you like a zombie. A zombie with a gun in her hand. And this is another little mini boss fight. But I gotta say, Konami back then really knew how to have fun. If you run around this merry-go-round in circles, you actually have a little bit of a cool thing. Sybil will actually sit on a horse and watch your dumbass run round and round. After slapping the shit out of Sybil and she collapses to the ground, the spine demon disconnects from her and Harry love taps it twice with his boot. That doesn't make any sense. And that somehow was enough to kill it. After curb stomping the spine fetus, Harry cares for Sybil in some way. He just bends down and starts talking to her, and we get a somewhat stylized recap of how Harry and his now dead wife found a baby in a ditch outside of the town of Silent Hill. Instead of taking the baby to the hospital or calling, I don't know, the police, Harry and his unnamed wife took the baby home and raised it as their own, because finding ditch babies is a very common, normal, everyday thing, I guess. And you take these children home like puppies. There's no need for a social security number or birth certificate or, any level of important documents. Just take little ditch baby home, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you end up doing crazy shit in otherworldly activities like in this game. Being too lazy to go to a hospital, check the baby out, and make a police report. Probably would have saved this entire game from ever happening. After telling a police officer this needlessly long story of kidnapping, which, let's not kid ourselves here, that's what Harry and his wife did, we apparently leave Sybil bleeding from her spine on the merry-go-round to go off exploring. I'm sure she'll be fine. We run into Alessa, who uses some Jedi force push thing on Harry. Harry says, I see your Star Wars, and I raise you one Legend of Zelda, and uses the Triforce to shut down Alessa's Jedi powers long enough for the creepy old Triforce lady to reveal that being old and creepy also makes you evil. Apparently. We find out the Triforce lady is Alessa's mother, and Alessa being bad, I guess, is a problem. I don't know. To be honest with you, at this point, I lost track of what the fuck's happening. After the Triforce lady and the newly acquired Jedi teleport away, you find yourself somehow back with Nurse Ratched. She seems like a really nice lady, but after hearing the name Alessa, our nurse friend freaks out and runs from Harry like he's annoyed trying to destroy her pizza. After catching up with the good nurse, with the memories of Alessa now coursing through her veins, Nurse Lisa begins to bleed from her head. More and more blood begins to run down her face as she slowly loses herself to madness of the other world. So, Nurse Lisa Garland is number 1, all the way in third act of the game. She's number 1 on our kill count. Because we only count human deaths, and she dies and turns into a zombie, I think. I'm not sure if she's gonna come back from this one. I don't know. Harry barricades the door in horror. After a bunch of exploring, Harry finds an old TV and presses play on a VCR. The terrible truth is revealed that this girl named Alessa was bullied and believed to be a witch. She was burned so bad that her skin looked as black and burned as charcoal, and a fury built up within her, and that fury fractured the world into multiple dimensions. That and the town that she lives in is full of cultists and devil worshippers, so that might play a little part in it. After a little bit more exploring, you see some shadow ghosts, and you find out that they saved Alessa from her bad burns, and the cultists are drawing some form of power from her. Even her own mother, Triforce Lady, is now allowing this to happen, because this is a flashback, I guess. Alessa's fury is getting stronger and stronger, and the stronger she gets, the more divided dimensions and reality split and begin to occur more often. Some of the cult members believe she's getting weaker, while others believe that she is getting stronger. Somehow, someone came up with the idea to impregnate poor Alessa, who is now an adult, but is still bedridden due to her severe burns. The version of her that we've been seeing around town is like a mental projection giving physical form. This baby that Alessa was carrying was believed by some to be her successor, or Alessa was going to use the baby to split her soul into two. However, the cultists had other ideas. They were going to use Alessa's unborn baby to be a vessel for their devil demon god thing. After pushing on, we come to a giant boss fight-like area, and the final conflict of our story is set. We have Triforce Lady, her daughter, yet mental and physical self, and a woman in a wheelchair. It is revealed to us that the woman in the wheelchair is Alessa, and the mental Jedi version of Alessa that we've been chasing all over town is actually our adoptive daughter, Cheryl, or Sherry, whatever you want to call her. The entire time, she was right in front of us. We've seen her multiple times. Why none of this was put together or planned out a little bit better story-wise, I don't know. But apparently being back in Silent Hill and closer to her original form forced the two mental, physical connections to transfer into each other. Apparently the baby that originally was from 8 years ago was Alessa's version, or a good version of herself that she transferred to this baby, which ended up in the ditch that Harry and his unnamed wife got and refused to report, and raised her for 8 years. And in that 8 years, the other tortured side of Alessa's soul got more and more angry, creating these different versions of Silent Hill that we had the nightmare time of navigating. Well, surprise, surprise, Alessa is pregnant again and about to give birth, making the cultists want to go through with their plan again, that Alessa is whole, or as near to whole as they need. But Alessa tricked her Triforce mother. She changed reality to make her mother think she was bringing to life this demon god thing, but in fact she was only making Alessa herself more powerful by making her whole once again. It's kind of one of those things where like the evil side of her got more evil, but the good side of her got more good, and coming together again kind of like just makes Voltron. I don't know, that makes about probably as much sense as the game does. So Alessa forms the Ultron version of herself, and just as it seems like Alessa is about to get things to go her way for once and make her evil, shitty mother pay for all the bad things she did to her, in enters Dr. Dickhead, and he tosses that suspicious bottle of red fluid that he bitched at us about earlier. This bottle was meant to do one thing, that was to stop Alessa's evil side, but again, that was kind of another ruse, and this bottle of red mysterious liquid instead amplifies her evil side. And in all honesty, we get this really cool effect. The good version of Alessa turns into this devil demon, and we get this really cool like lightning attack, and it's not cool just like by PS1 standards. Even by today's standards, I think that this lightning is really creepy and cool at the same time. But anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, so you killed this demon thing with bullets like you would, and this allows Alessa to regain control, and Alessa again takes the good of her soul and transfers it into this unborn new baby that somehow is wrapped in a towel. Harry takes this baby too and begins to run away with Sybil. Zombie nurse Lisa reappears and drags Dr. Dickhead down to hell, just as Harry and Sybil are about to be burned by the falling fire, rain, trash stuff. I don't know what the hell this is. In a last act of kindness, Alessa pauses the falling fire long enough so that Sybil and Harry can escape with the new version of Ditch Baby. So that makes our new kill count, since it all kind of happened at once. Let's see, 5, I think. We're just going to go at 5. It's kind of muddy because we got Nurse Lady, Dr. Dick, Triforce Mama, Alessa / Cheryl / burned Alessa. So I don't know if that counts as one person or 3. Anyway, Sybil and Harry, along with new Ditch Baby, find themselves coming to on the outskirts of Silent Hill. I don't know if Sybil and Harry got together and raised new Ditch Baby. Seems kind of weird. Sybil's never mentioned again in Silent Hill 3, which, spoiler alert, is kind of a direct sequel to the original Silent Hill, which we just got done watching. That always kind of confused me. Seems like they got together. We'll just assume they got together. But basically, this game is really creepy. It's really awesome. The story's kind of weird, scatterbrained. It seems more random and crazy every time I play it, in all honesty. I think the next few games keep, and in some cases actually ramp up, the scares and creep factor. The stories after this game, I just feel like they're a lot more thought out and put together. I don't know if maybe something got lost in translation, because these games, for those of you that don't know, were originally made for a Japanese market and then were translated to English by Konami. Kind of the same thing like with Metal Gear and, you know, Castlevania, I believe do the same thing. They make a Japanese version first, and then they either dub or make a you know, different lip sync version for different languages. So Konami makes America or English-speaking countries their second market, I believe. But this is a great game to play around Halloween time. The original deserves to have a modern remake / retelling, and not in a shitty, gimmicky way like they did with the Wii. I mean an actual full-on remake, because sadly, I mean, it's not really sadly, but the original is one of the best Silent Hill games, and it's probably the best intro into the Silent Hill franchise as a whole. Even though, speaking of whole, Harry Mason runs like he has a corncob stuck up his. That's probably the weirdest thing about this game, is that, for people that are under the age of like 25, they're going to see the graphics of this game and immediately be turned off by it. And honestly, this game is a feast of creepiness, nostalgia, and horror. The atmospheres are absolutely nailed, and they make you feel intense, and they make you think in the situation, they make you adapt on the fly. It's more, to me anyway, it seems like it's more resource heavy than Resident Evil was, because you gotta, find that ammo, and you have to end up saving it for bosses, so that it ends up with you running more than you fight. So you gotta kind of be strategic a little bit more. I think, anyway. Our story starts off once again on the outskirts of Silent Hill, this time in a rundown bathroom at a rest stop near Toluca Lake. James, our main protagonist, hears a voiceover of his deceased wife. The voiceover is brought to you by a letter that he received with her name on it. Named Mary. The weird thing is, Mary, James's wife, has been dead for 3 years from an unknown disease. Mary said in her note to meet at their special place. James, thinking that this is a nearby park, heads off down the middle and through the woods to find his dead wife. He goes, hearing all matters of creepy-ass sounds coming from the said woods around him. James comes to a seemingly empty graveyard until he runs into a literal red flag of a person. Her name is Angela, but for right now we're just going to call her Red Flag. So James asks how to get to the nearby town of Silent Hill, and Red Flag tells him that there's only one road, and there's a possibility that things are dangerous. This is the biggest understatement ever. James dismisses Red Flag like a boss and continues stating that he doesn't really care if it's dangerous or not. It's nice to actually play as someone who's kind of brave and doesn't faint out like a little bitch every 15 minutes. Like in the first game. James goes a long way around and somehow never comes across a down road or a blocked path until he hears a small red radio blaring static nearby. As we all know, static means to put your brown pants on. Speaking of brown pants, this creature stands up and begins to attack James. Instead of running away or fading out, he rips a pipe off the wall and proceeds to exorcise the demon in the drain tunnel, and after coming out the other side with his unstained brown pants, James hears the voice of his wife coming through the broken static of the radio. James decides to keep the radio, thinking it might come in handy somehow later. After walking around aimlessly and beating the shit out of more monsters, James finds an apartment key. Apparently Silent Hill only has one apartment building, so James decides to go visit it. I guess. The apartment is dark as shit, and almost right away, James finds a clip-on flashlight and says, "Awesome, free flashlight." Right after, James gets attacked by two south halves. After literally beating the pair of legs to death, you come across a key you need on the other side of some bars. After nearly getting said key, a bratty kid comes out and kicks the key out of the way and stomps on James's hand, reminding us all why wearing a condom is so important. After running through the halls of the apartment building, this pants-shitting moment happens. James gathers by the noise coming from the north of his current position. After reaching the apartment, you see a TV covered in blood with nothing but static on it. There's a man sitting on the chair with the insides of his head on the outside. I guess we can all call this guy number 1 on our list, Mystery Couch Guy. After using a nearby clock key and setting the clock to 9:09, you hear a click and are able to push the giant clock to the side and access the secret room, finding a fire escape key and a much needed handgun. After exploring the apartment some more, you come across a fan favorite monster, Pyramid Head, violating another southern half monster. After beating, We're just gonna say beating. Hugging viciously. A monster. James finds his way into a nearby closet. James, not wanting Pyramid Head to be his next date, uses his gun and unloads all his extra shots into Pyramid Head, giving him a few extra holes to let his perviness out. Pyramid Head just walks away, even though later on we see him shrug off bullets like he does dates. After leaving the safety of the closet, James comes across a frat boy blowing chunks into a nearby toilet. The frat boy introduces himself as Eddie. While he's still praying to the porcelain god, after a short conversation, James leaves Eddie to destroying that poor toilet. As he finds the door nearby, uses the fire escape exit key, James finds that there's no fire exit, just a window, and the building next door is close enough for him to jump into the window. Finding a dirtier, more rundown building on the inside, and after a short bout of exploring, James comes across Red Flag in a nearby room laying on a dirty-ass floor. After moping around and showing that she has some mental illnesses, shocker, James sees that she's holding a knife. Crazy lady gets a little bit more crazy, and James figures out that Red Flag's mother lives in town by process of elimination. Red Flag, clearly upset and clearly confused, stands up, saying that she needs to find her mama. James asks about the knife, since Red Flag is showing some suicidal actions and thoughts. Red Flag offers to give the knife willingly, but when James goes to grab it, she freaks out and almost stabs him with it, before quickly apologizing, leaving the knife on the table and exiting. And it leaves us to carry the knife for almost the rest of the game, using up valuable inventory space for no reason at all. James leaves and comes across Pyramid Head again, molesting another poor monster. James begins to fight with the horny monster, firing shot after shot into it, with no clear sign of causing any real damage, because the power of boners, I guess. A siren begins to blare, and Pyramid Head retreats down a flooded staircase. With a quick turn of a valve, James drains that water and gives chase to the weirdly horny, molesty monster. The staircase leads outside into the foggy, deserted streets of Silent Hill. James runs into Little Hand Stomper herself, humming while she sits on a wall. After James tries to get to know her a little bit, the little brat is holding a letter, and after James asks about it, the little girl gets spooked, saying that James never truly loved Mary. James, taken back, asks the little girl how she knows Mary's name, as she's hopping over the wall and out of sight. James gives chase, and instead of finding a little girl, he finds a big blonde girl named Maria. It's noted that Maria has a striking resemblance to Mary, James's wife, with, in his words, only her hair and clothes being different. James explains why he's here in Silent Hill for the 5th time in 5 minutes, and goes to leave, but Maria convinces James to take her along with him. After walking around with Maria, the pair comes to a bowling alley. James is about to go in when Maria says that she'll stay outside because, just like everybody else, after playing Grand Theft Auto 4, she hates bowling.
Nico, it's Roman. Let's go bowling.
James enters the bowling alley to find the blonde brat questioning Eddie, who's eating a pizza for some reason. She asks why Eddie is running from the police, and he denies it, continuing to eat his pizza. The child runs when she hears James enter. Eddie says her name is Laura, and after James asks Eddie to help him stop her and ask her some questions, Eddie would rather sit and eat his pizza. After exiting, Maria says that Laura outran her, and that the two come to a dead end where Laura has seemingly slipped between two buildings. Maria uses her Jill Master unlocking set to open a nearby door, and James and Maria find their way through a dimly lit building and down some stairs, where they see Laura running into a nearby hospital. After beating the crap out of some dirty faceless nurses and some double souths, Maria, and who hasn't done dick up until this point, except unlock a door, she says she needs to rest in a nearby room, that she drank too much last night and has a hangover. James, ever the gentleman, leaves Maria in the dirty-ass hospital bed to go find Laura. After free roaming around a little bit in the hospital, James finds himself on the roof, and for some reason, Pyramid Head comes out of seemingly nowhere and knocks James through a rusty gate. After taking a gravity-induced nap, James wakes up and re-enters the hospital. James finds a box containing a few hairs, and after using the hairs like MacGyver, James gets an elevator key from a shower drain. I don't understand it either. After using the elevator key, you go to the first floor and find Laura playing in the dark with some teddy bears. After a short conversation, James asks how she knows Mary. Laura says that she was friends with Mary, and they met while they were in the hospital last year. James loses his temper for the second time, calling Laura a liar. After talking to Laura some more, James convinces Laura to come with him, and Laura convinces James that she left behind a letter from Mary and needs to go get it. Not sensing that this brat is about to do something bratty, James falls for the 8-year-old's trap, hook, line, and sinker. Laura locks James in a room with 2 monsters swinging from the ceiling. James is pounding on the door trying to get Laura to open it, Laura only calling him a fart face for his trouble. James unloads some vitamin lead into these swinging monsters and the siren begins to blare. And the monsters seem to slowly become more and more vulnerable. James kills them and reality seems to shift around him. No, he doesn't lose consciousness because he's not a little bitch baby like Harry, but he does seem to envision himself laying in a gurney that's getting ushered down a hall. After which, reality seems to snap back and James is in a completely different room. After some exploring, James pushes a bookshelf out of the way. Maria finds James, and for the 7th time, James mistakes Maria for Mary. Mary gets mad at James for leaving her, even though she asked him to, and I don't know why that would be. Mary joins James again, and they go into an elevator where James's broken radio begins to play a weirdly creepy game show, stating that James is the contestant, and the show is called Trick or Treat. The host of this weird radio show asks 3 seemingly random questions, asking the name of the amusement park in Silent Hill, the name of a serial killer, and the name of a road. Maria saying what everybody's thinking with a simple, "What the hell is that?" After coming to a stop and finding only a lead ring and a puzzle box, if you enter in the right answers that the radio host questioned you about, you're rewarded with shotgun shells and some health items. You find a cool 3D painting on the door with the lead ring. You can use that to unlock the door. After walking down many steps and running through what seems like to be a maze in the basement, James enters an elevator, and Maria is seemingly too slow, and Pyramid Head seems to kill her. Maria dies via a stab in the back, or so it would seem. We even get some moody, somber music, seeming to seal the deal, but Maria ain't gonna go on the kill count just yet. You'll find out later. James finds a key and a map with a poem written on it, signaling him to go to a certain point on the map. After exiting, Silent Hill is covered in total darkness, and after getting to the point on the map, James finds a wrench and another note calling him a fool and sending him to a plot of dirt that he uncovers a metal box. The metal box is locked by some bolts, and after using the wrench, James finds an old bronze key inside. After walking down some steps, like for an eternity, you would think the devil himself would be at the end waiting for James, but no, instead he only comes to this door, and inside is a dark hole in the ground that James says screw it and jumps down into. This is a very long drop, and at the bottom it seems like a really creepy old well, like the Ring or something. But after tapping around in the dark, James finds that there is a small point of this wall that seems hollow. And after breaking it, a door is revealed, and the door leads through a dark, gross sewer-like area, which leads into another seemingly long drop farther into hell-esque Silent Hill. We somehow find Eddie here, who has seemingly gone off the deep end, and also seemingly kills a person in this area, showing only a bloody bits of human remains. So we'll call this leftover meatloaf of a human being number 2, I guess. Eddie makes a quick exit and James follows, making his way through the dark hallways and down another deep hole. And yet another deep hole. I think at this point, he's going to come out on the other side of the planet, so why not go down yet another deep dark hole? After taking the elevator, you guessed it, down, we find some extra ammo and health items, letting us gamers know that there is a boss fight coming up really soon. After coming to and finding a puzzle in the form of a thwomp from Mario Kart, and spinning up, down, left, right, BA start, we come to our favorite character from West Side Story. Locked behind bars, she seems confused when James asks how she survived. She flirts with James and says she can't do anything behind these bars. James leaves the room with blue balls and tries to find a way to get to Maria and set her free. After some more searching, James comes across Red Flag again. This time she's hunkered down in a creepy room with, well, let's say suggestive wall design. After being crazy again, we see that she calls this monster in the corner that looks like two people banging on a table her papa. After filling the freaky table with a few pounds of lead, it falls to the floor and Red Flag Angela kicks the living shit out of it and slams an old TV on it just to make sure it's dead. Red Flag accuses James of Me Tooing and leaves the room in a non-graceful manner of her someone who just got their bacon saved, tossing one more insult to James, saying that he left his wife for someone else before she makes her exit. James follows Red Flag, somehow missing her, but he comes to her room finding Maria covered in blood and seemingly dead again, but she won't go on the countdown either. James is upset seeing someone die seemingly for the second time today, and for the second time we have to listen to somber music as we walk around in the darkness sulking for another 5 minutes. I swear, the longer and longer this game goes on, the more you gotta turn the brightness up, just to see anything that's more than 5 feet in front of you. Anyway, after stumbling around in the darkness for 2 more clicks of brightness on the setting, we come across Crazy Eddie again, and I see what appears to be 5 bodies of random people seemingly killed by Eddie in these little quick cuts. I don't know who the hell was directing this little crazy camera action, but it gives me a freaking headache. I guess that brings our total up to 7 at this point. Eddie goes on a rant about how he was bullied and won't take shit anymore from anybody. James asks Eddie if he's finally gone nuts, and Eddie now thinks James is making fun of him, and now sees him as a threat, and starts to shoot James, his first shot landing in James's shoulder. James shrugs off this gunshot, way better than Harry ever did, and returns fire at Eddie, making him flee deeper into the meat locker. After a short back and forth, you get into another shootout with Eddie. After a small shootout in a game with zero cover or a game design geared towards enemies that shoot back, we turn Eddie into some Swiss cheese. He falls back and becomes another piece of meat in this meat locker, and also becomes another number on our count. Number 8 to be exact. James gets butthurt over killing a human, and it's kind of ironic after we learn what James did later. James leaves the meat locker, and somehow after falling halfway to hell, we are somehow on the surface level with the lake. After entering a rowboat, we as the player are left to reflect on all the events that led up to this point in the game. We literally row ourselves into the final act of this game. After rowing our boat for what seems like a really long time, we finally reach the docks outside the fabled Lakeview Hotel. We enter in, and to surprise, it's empty, and only a map that has some writing on it to the room that you and your wife Mary spent time together in 3 years ago. Along with that, James finds a videotape and a can opener for some reason. James finds a fish key in the dining room, and the bratty little Laura playing a single scary note on the piano. She asks James if he found Mary yet, and after a short conversation, Laura gives James a letter somehow left to her by Mary, saying a tearful and sorrowful goodbye, saying how she was going to adopt her, and all this and that, and it was going to be for her 7th birthday, and James reads it and asks how old Laura is. Laura replies that she turned 8 last week. James, doing some quick math, now knows that there's no way possible that Mary could have died 3 years ago. Laura says there was another letter and gets upset, noting that she dropped it. So she quickly runs out the front door off to find this third letter that Mary supposedly wrote to her. James continues on without her as he sees that she's been fine by herself and he has some wife finding to do. James enters the room that he rented with his wife, popping in the videotape in the VCR, and in the video, his wife says how happy she is and how she wants to return one day before going into a coughing fit. The video cuts in and out of static showing Mary in the hospital before showing James at her bedside and seemingly attacking her before it cuts off into static. James sits in the chair in disbelief as he apparently didn't remember that he killed his wife. Laura enters the room and asks if James found Mary. James reveals to Laura that Mary is gone, that she's dead. Laura asks if Mary died because she was sick, and James seemingly comes clean, saying only, "No, I killed her." Laura has a temper tantrum, hitting James and telling him that she hates him. James gives no detail to this little girl wanting to know about Mary. He only says he's sorry and that Mary, the Mary that Laura knows, isn't here. James says sorry to Laura one more time before she leaves the room in a huff. James sits and sulks again for a little while with the same somber music playing. Though his little red radio begins to blare and through the static, Mary calls James again, telling him that she's waiting nearby. James exits the room and heads out into the hotel covered in darkness and is now dripping wet as if it rapidly aged in the time he spent in the room. James comes across the burning stairwell and sees Red Flag after talking for a bit. Red Flag asks for her knife back, and James says no. After returning upstairs as the fire starts to take over the staircase, in last-ditch effort to save Red Flag, James asks her to come with him and that it's getting hotter as the fire starts to grow. She says only, "You see it too. It's like this all the time for me." These are the last words we hear her say to James before seemingly walking up the burning staircase to her presumed death. So Angela, Miss Red Flag herself, will become number 9 on our kill count via death from an imaginary fire. James leaves her to her fate and walks up for seemingly the first time in a long time, coming to a dark-ass room and finding Maria with 2 pyramid heads. And for seemingly the third time in 30 minutes, Maria is killed, but since she isn't seen again after this, Maria becomes number 10 on our kill count. James has some sort of inner revelation and says he no longer feels the need to be punished and wants to end this all once and for all. He fights the 2 pointy heads, and James walks off down the hallway. It's a really long hallway. The entire time his wife Mary is calling herself a monster and pushing him away. It's just a conversation, but she says that between the meds and the illness, she actually feels like she's turning into a real monster. James is part of the voiceover. He seems dumbfounded and hurt and still continues to want to be there with her, but he also hates himself for hating her, but he loves her, and he hates the things that are like this, and it's fully revealed that why James has this guilt is that he used a pillow to smother his wife to death while she slept. He was feeling a mixture of emotions, and he didn't want to see her suffer. He loved her, but he also hated her for being sick. He wanted her and him to have their life back together. He wanted to be done with it. He wanted her to be over with suffering, and basically what it comes down to is all the monsters that he's been fighting and seeing up to this point, everything that he's been through, is basically a physical manifestation of all his emotions he's felt since doing what he's done to his wife. And we all know how Silent Hill loves to feed off the pain and suffering of others. James makes his way to the top of the hotel to face the physical form of all his guilt and all his pain. Of course, it's in the form of Mary. He calls Mary by name. Mary corrects him, saying, "Why do you keep making that mistake?" Mary is now seemingly Maria, even though Maria was Maria, and this whole name confusing thing keeps going on for a little bit more. James actually says that he doesn't need either one of them anymore, Mary or Maria. And After coming to this realization that this nightmare creature has been feeding off of James, realizes that her tricks aren't going to work anymore, turns and morphs into a more nightmarish, hellish creature version of his wife. Even though she doesn't really look like his wife anymore. It's an upside down monster in a cage. But this is the final showdown. After dumping all your remaining ammo and getting attacked by Batman's namesake, Mary, or the nightmare form of her, falls to the ground, and with one final strike, James puts an end to his walking nightmare. We are shown James talking to Mary as she lay in her deathbed. She says that she wanted to die and for the pain to end, and James comes to terms with what he did to her, and he apologizes one more time. Mary accepts it, asking him to do one more favor for her. And the favor that Mary wants James to do is to just forgive himself, start over, live his life the best he can. And the game ends with the long version of Mary's letter, as we count Mary as our number 11 on the kill count. The letter comes to an end, and we see Laura and James leaving Silent Hill together, off to start a new life, free of guilt and pain. I gotta say, this version of the story, because there was Silent Hill 1, the story kind of bounces all around, and it doesn't really make much sense. This story doesn't really make much sense either, but for a 2001 game that was originally made in Japanese, transferred over to English, the story, to me anyway, is a lot easier to follow. The reason why he keeps confusing Maria and Mary, because I guess they look alike, but their hair and clothes are different. I don't know, it's a little bit strange, but overall, I have to say that of all the Silent Hill games, Silent Hill 2 is my favorite. Our story opens up full throttle. We're in what appears to be a more detailed version of the Hellscape amusement park from Silent Hill 1's third act. Heather walks around and finds multiple creepy bunnies that are covered in blood. They're just staring at us, menacingly. Heather ignores Bill Murray's rule about playing on train tracks. What was that rule again, Bill?
Don't drive on the railroad track.
Heather wakes up in a diner, commenting on Groundhog Day's production problems.
What a nightmare.
All this reminiscing makes Heather want to take a walk, to fully wake up from her burger-induced nap, and to go make a phone call to her dad, only to be followed by some suspicious-looking feet. I don't see no gum on them shoes. While on the phone, we find the creepy feet are attached to a somewhat creepy man. We find out this peeping creepy is Detective Douglas Cartwright. The off-putting detective tells Heather someone wants to meet her, asking for only a half hour of her time, when Heather hits him with the classic.
My daddy always told me not to talk to strangers.
The creepy detective keeps being creepy, following Heather down a corridor, who gets tired of his creepy bullshit and threatens to scream.
Are you still following me? Do I have to scream?
This causes Detective Creepo to pump the brakes. Heather enters the bathroom and pulls off yet another classic ditch. The Creepo by jumping out of the bathroom window routine. Heather runs down the alley, and for me, this is where I first noticed the overly loud and droning background music. It seems the audio engineer really wanted us to hear it. Even important voice lines aren't saved from the intrusive and inconsistent soundtrack, that sometimes is distractingly out of place. Heather finds a door and gets back into the mall, but something feels noticeably off about this part of the mall. It looks suspiciously more Silent Hillier. Heather finds a store that is half shuttered, and she crawls her way into the entrance, only to find a free wireless hole puncher just sitting there on the floor. But hey, nothing suspicious here. Free gun. Heather picks up her new Second Amendment accessory, only to see a grotesquely contorted monster scraping along the floor. But wait, that's not just a floor. That's our number 1 on the kill count, the human Lunchable. Heather pops the monster muncher 7 times with our new Devil's Paintbrush before it runs dry. The hangry monster can't decide if it wants another snack or to take a nap. Hey, I guess nap it is. Heather exits them all back into the alleyway, only to find Kendo's van. "You're on the wrong game, fella." It's doing what it does best, that is, blocking alleyways. Heather heads back into the abandoned mall and up to the second floor, only to walk right into a meme. Classic. And also get some tongs that will help us get a key later, which leads to a book puzzle in which you don't have to put the books in order. You have to put the books in a special way to get a door code that's behind you. And I gotta say, my OCD is killing me, knowing that we're gonna leave these abandoned books in this abandoned store, unorganized and out of order. It might be the true horror all along. The door opens to the hallway with a creepy white woman who looks suspiciously like an Ashcroft twin from Code Veronica and sounds like the Ancient One from Doctor Strange. Her job is to remind us where we are in the story.
Beginning.
And to introduce herself.
I am Claudia.
So what?
I don't know about you, but I think it's kind of weird that all the humans we've met so far are creepy as fuck. Heather has a mini aneurysm as creepy Claudia exits stage right. Heather enters an elevator and finds a free radio. Hey, free radio, free wireless hole puncher. Today's a good day, Tater. Heather exits the elevator to see some more scary shit, only to take part in an involuntary lock-in. Nutty, nutty. After running around the worst mall ever for a really, really, really long time, you find this ladder that kind of reminds me of the ladder from Metal Gear Solid 3. Only instead of climbing up the ladder, we climb down, and as soon as we get to the bottom, the ladder magically disintegrates, almost like we're getting set up for a boss fight. Ah, shit. He's right behind me, isn't he? Holy shit, we're getting attacked by Thanos' dick. After playing a somewhat inappropriate game of Whack-A-Dick, only to wake up in a much cleaner, but yet just as empty mall, it really speaks to the economy at this day and age that a mall this big is this empty in the middle of the day. Anyway, after getting her bearings straight, Heather runs back into the Detective Creepo after, in a panic, explaining what just happened. The detective explains to her that he does, in fact, know who Claudia is, as she was the one who hired him to find Heather, though he denies being involved with all the purple dick attacks. The only thing I'll say is that it's actually nice for once to have a character that sees what we're seeing. I'm tired of, in the last two games, where you run around and everybody acts like this is just a normal Tuesday, and it's like, you're not seeing what the fuck I'm seeing? After arguing back and forth, Heather says deuces and enters the subway station, armed with her newly acquired weapon. Honestly, anyone entering a subway this late at night knows that this is likely a smart decision. After wandering around this mostly accurate American subway station, we find our number 2 on our kill count, a random dude taking a long nap on some rough concrete under some newspaper and cardboard. Another sadly normal sight here in America. We'll call him Larry. Living like Larry used to. Living, dying like... Larry's dead. We get a train car-sized jump scare, after which we enter the train car and go for a little ride. We come out on an underground power station / sewer, and honestly this reminds me of a more detailed and better version of the sewer from Resident Evil 2. It is one thing I gotta say about Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Both of them like to kind of feed off of each other, and it just makes both of them a better product. You could play one game and it gives callbacks to a different game from a different series. There's always been a parallel between Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and I, for one, absolutely love that. That Capcom and Konami can kind of inadvertently cooperate to give us fans callbacks to not only their own games, but to other awesome games in the genre. After getting through the sewer, we open a random door and find this random dude brooding at his desk, acting suspiciously normal for his surroundings, and he introduces himself as Vincent. Yes, I described this guy as suspiciously normal. That will be the last time I ever do that. Vincent says that he knows you and your father. Vincent acts surprised that Heather don't remember incidents from when she was a baby, when she was saved from certain death by none other than the player character from the first Silent Hill, Harry Mason. Vincent insists Harry was the villain, and Heather gets justifiably angry. Vincent says he's on Heather's side, and when she asks how to end all of this, he says,
"Not yet."
Why not? Enjoy yourself a bit longer.
Enjoy?
Let me let you in on a little secret, boys and girls. If someone says some creepy ass shit like this, they're not on your side. Heather says we're all thinking,
There's something wrong with you too.
I don't know what it is about every Silent Hill game, but we run into these weirdly mentally unstable people. I know Silent Hill is meant to be personal hell and all, but you'd think there wouldn't be so many window lickers. It's just strange. Every game, there's a lot of window lickers. After fumbling around in the darkness for another 30 minutes, we stumble out into the streets, and at this point it feels like forever since we've been in the outside world. It almost comes as a relief. However, it's extremely noticeable how quiet everything is. This is a city after all, and there's nobody around. You can't even hear the wind blowing. But anyway, we enter an apartment building. We assume it's probably our apartment building. We enter what is assumed to be our home. I have to admit, I was excited at the possibility of seeing Harry Mason in updated graphics, but not like this. No, man, come on, not like this. No. And just like that, the OG himself, Harry Mason, ends up as number 3 on our kill count, from what appears to be a gunshot or stab wound to the chest. Heather, crying in Harry's lap, notices a blood trail leading up the fire escape, and she chases down the splatter to the rooftop and finds the runner-up in the Crawford twin lookalike contest and confronts her about what the fuck's going on and why she killed the protagonist of the first game.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Yeah, why, you bitch? Claudia said it was revenge for stopping their plan 17 years ago, and for Harry saving an innocent baby, in which any person with a soul would have done. Heather says, I'll get you for this, like she isn't armed with a hand cannon and a good old-fashioned boomstick. She for some reason allows Claudia to ramble on for an unusual amount of time. I don't know why, maybe to further the plot or something. Claudia says she also did it to fill Heather's heart with rage and hatred. Finally, Heather aims her wireless hole puncher, only for her to skirt responsibility and to say that the monster in the corner is the one that murdered her father. She just gave the order. As the monster closes in on us, Claudia exits stage right again and says she'll be waiting for us in Silent Hill. After easily dispatching Pokey the Bear, we head back down into our apartment to find Detective Dougie snooping around. After offering his apologies, Heather tells him to politely fuck off. For some reason, he still doesn't leave. This dude is like a bad case of the herp. He just keeps coming back. The scene fades to Heather and Detective Herp standing over Harry's covered corpse, laying on a bed. After a short conversation, Heather tells Doug that she plans to go to Silent Hill to get revenge and kill Claudia for murdering her father. After saying our final goodbyes to Harry, Heather meets Detective Dougie outside, who says he just got done talking to the window licker Vincent, and says that Vincent gave him a map of Silent Hill and instructions to find a guy named Leonard. Old Dougie hands Heather a file, saying her father was holding on to it. In the car, Detective Dougie mentions that he's been to Silent Hill once for a missing persons case. I don't know about anybody else. I assume that this was James, the protagonist from Silent Hill 2. Doug ends his thought by saying that he never found the guy. Heather begins to remember the events of Silent Hill. Dahlia, the girl's twin souls, how she was forced to give birth to a demon god, how Harry, a mere mortal, killed that god, and when the woman reappeared, she was holding a baby and handed it to Harry before bringing down everything all around her. Heather remembers this, thanking Harry for loving her and raising her as his own. The two drive off into the night, determined to take this all the way to the end, for better or worse. They arrive in Silent Hill and are talking in a rundown motel room. They come up with a plan. Detective Doug will track down this Leonard guy, and Heather will search the nearby hospital for some reason. After roaming around the streets of Silent Hill and giving some demon nurses a healthy dose of vitamin lid, we enter a random room and a phone inside begins to ring. The man on the other end confuses us for Claudia. After telling him many times that your name isn't Claudia, and revealing that it is in fact Heather, he relents and reveals that he is Leonard, the guy that Detective Dougie is currently seeking out. He also reveals that he's Claudia's father and knows that Heather is here to kill her, stating he can feel your hatred through the phone. The conversation ends with him asking for Heather's help. He's locked in a room on the second floor, and he can help us, saying that he has a seal. I don't know what good a seal will do in all of this, but I'll take whatever help I can get. While looking for the room on the second floor, we come to one of the creepiest and coolest moments in the game, and it's a thing that I still remember to this day anytime this game comes to mind. The creepy mirror room. It starts off normal enough. Your reflection shows a creepy, blood-veined area in the mirror at first, and it's not in the room that's with you, and then all of a sudden it is in the room with you. It starts spreading out on the floor, getting on Heather herself, but it's only in the reflection, and then it starts to eat away at the real floor that you're standing on and the wall, and you're left with the only logical thing to do: run for it. We come across another ringing phone, this one at the bottom of a locker, and it's not hooked up to anything, which is not the strangest thing, but still pretty strange, with a guy on the other end singing happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Heather keeps saying that it's not her birthday, but the guy says she'll get who she hates the most as her present. Again, there are some weird-ass people in Silent Hill, and they just keep getting weirder. Anyway, we go back to hunting for Leonard. We go down a ladder into some knee-deep water, and we can hear Leonard's voice, but we can't see him. I was already on the fence about this character, but it seems nuttier than squirrel shit, and feels almost like a trap. Leonard turns out to be a monster that somehow, even though he doesn't have a mouth, can still talk just fine. We end up killing this creature and taking his seal. Though this monster had a name and a voice, he won't go on the count because he's a monster. After dumping most of our ammo into Leonard, we leave the hospital and return to the hotel room, only to find that Detective Dougie isn't there, but instead, it's the old window licker himself, Vincent. Vincent says that Doug was here and left a message about meeting him on the other side of the lake at a church, but to cut through the amusement park to get there, as it's likely the only way. I know it's a trap, you know it's a trap, we all know it's a trap. We know that we can't trust window licker, but
I don't know, might further the plot.
As we enter the park, Heather falls to her knees in pain, grabbing her stomach as she hears what sounds like chanting and rhythmic whispering. She shakes it off, and we find ourselves reliving the events of the dream we had during the opening, even walking the same tracks of the roller coaster. But this time we get to see what happens. Just before the coaster hits Heather, she jumps off the tracks and into the darkness. With Without seeing an impact or knowing Heather's fate, we are then transitioned to show Detective Dougie talking to Claudia. He's telling her how he hates being used and that Claudia lied to him about Heather. The scene ends with Dougie taking aim at Claudia, and then it fades to black before we see or hear what happens next. We come back to Heather, who's coming out of her gravity-induced nap on top of a ticket kiosk. At this point, I can't help but feel I misjudged Detective Dougie a little bit. He may be like the herp and keep coming back and won't go away, but also like the herp, he's a friend for life. Heather gets down from the ticket booth that broke her fall and starts exploring the park some more. We find Detective Doug, who has been beaten up and has a broken right leg. After a short conversation, we head off on our own to face Claudia. However, as Heather has her back turned, my original thought on the creepy old Doug resurfaces. Doug points his gun at Heather's back, sensing a disturbance in the force, and without turning around, Heather asks what he's doing. Doug says, "Maybe killing you is the only way to end this nightmare." They both think in their own way that might be the right thing to do, but Doug can't fire, and Heather continues to walk away. After getting on a hellish carousel, we come face to face with our mirror self once again. This time there's no mirror, but she is armed with a very menacing looking potato peeler. After beating yourself to death, I guess this kind of counts as number 4, being it's your dark side, your mirror self. The only reason I'm counting this is because of Alessa in the first game has 2 people in one body, and basically it's a long story. I'm just counting it. I'm counting it. After running up enough steps to make Rocky Balboa proud, we finally come face to face with the white-haired bitch herself, Claudia. Their conversation is short, but Heather points her gun at her again, and why doesn't she have any extra holes? What are you waiting for? Shoot! Heather, starting to remember her old life, tells Claudia that she is Alessa and doesn't want a world of suffering anymore. The world already has enough pain. And speaking of pain, Heather has a strong pain in her gut again. Claudia says that the god is growing bigger inside of her. Before this bitch exits stage right again. I mean, when is this white-haired bitch gonna get shot? Heather walks over to an empty confessional. You can hear the voice of a woman pleading for God to forgive her. We're given the option to either say, "I forgive you," or to say nothing at all. I always pick nothing because literally we're here to kill a bitch and get revenge, and it doesn't really feel like it's my place to offer forgiveness for anybody. I mean, I'm actually here to do some wicked shit myself. While searching for Claudia, we run into Window Licker again, who explains that he is against Claudia and is trying to help us. For as much as I hate this guy, he brought up something that really did chill me to the bone. When explaining, Heather is the bad person here, and the way she snuffs out the creatures attacking her, this is said.
You come here and enjoy spilling their blood. And listening to them cry out. You feel excited when you step on them and snuff out their lives.
Are you talking about the monsters?
Monsters? They look like monsters to you?
Oh no.
Don't worry. It's just a joke.
Even though he said he was joking, I thought this was an awesome concept and one that would have a lot more weight added to the story. He does say, it was a joke, it was a sleight of hand, but I think it would have been really nuts to come to find out that we've been killing regular people this whole time. We've only just seen them as monsters. But honestly, I am kind of happy that it is just a joke, because I would have to completely restart my account. Anyway, just before entering some overly evil looking ass double doors, we get to see a conversation between Claudia and Vincent, who we find out is a priest. arguing about this demon god thing. Claudia wants to bring it into our world. Vincent wants it to stay away because it isn't really God. Heather walks in as their argument reaches its peak. Vincent turns around to Heather, calling her the guest of honor, and says to her, "Please kill Claudia," as the bitch-ass Claudia stabs Vincent in the back, literally. After a bunch of self-righteous bullshit talk, Vincent, in his dying words, asks you to use the seal. Claudia says that the seal is useless as she stabs Vincent in the chest. And just like that, Vincent the Window Licker becomes number 5 on our kill count, being stabbed in the back and then stabbed in the front. As Claudia says some more self-righteous bullshit, Heather collapses to the floor in pain as the demon god grows within her. Heather pushes back and tells Claudia what we've all been thinking for the last 3 hours.
Shut your stinking mouth, bitch!
Heather, now back on her feet, grabs a pendant that her father Harry gave to her. As she's gripping it, it appears that she swallows a piece of it, or whatever was inside of it. The demon thing didn't enjoy that and decides to make its grand entrance, or in this case, exit. Heather performed some kind of impromptu vomit exorcism abortion type thing, and Claudia, not knowing when to just give the fuck up, I shit you not, she picks up the demon puke baby and begins to eat it. Nasty bitch. Well, she gets her wish, and the demon baby grows within her now. It comes into existence as Claudia's water breaks. I guess that's what this means. She kneels down over a suspicious hole in the floor, only to have a demon rip her down to the floor, creating a crude vagina-shaped hole in that floor. Heather says, "Fuck it, YOLO," and jumps down into the dark abyss of the demon vagina in pursuit of Claudia, who I'm pretty sure is dead. And we are assured of that fact when we find Claudia's discarded clothing on the ground, so we can add her to the kill count as number 6. Also, this made even more disturbing because now I'm imagining Claudia naked. Thanks for that disturbing image, Konami. After dumping all of our ammo and kicking the demon in the head twice for good measure, Heather has a breakdown knowing that's all over and finally cries for the loss of her father. Once Heather resurfaces, we add our final number to our kill count, Detective Dougie.
Is it really over?
Not yet. You're still alive.
Doo-dum, 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 doo-dum.
Oh! Just a joke.
Just kidding. In this ending, Heather decides to use her original name that Harry gave her so long ago, all the way back in the very first Silent Hill game.
Cheryl. The name my father gave me.
You gonna let your hair color go back too?
I don't know. Don't you think blondes have more fun?
Holy shit, we're getting attacked by Thanos' dick. Holy shit. I don't know why I fucking find that so funny. But also like the her pizza friend for life. Anyway. So I gotta admit that Silent Hill 3 is not really my favorite in the series. I've always liked 1 and 2 a little bit more, but yeah, this video's been a long time coming. I promised it about 2 years ago, but these videos are very hard to edit and film. I had to play this game in 2 different 3-hour sessions to get the footage to use for this video. I had to write a script, I had to perform that script, and edit it all together for you fine folks. I love doing it, I love interacting with all of you, but it is very tiresome and time consuming. This literally took my entire weekend. Anyway, thank you all for watching this. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys in this one. Take care, have a good weekend, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.